The modern nation of El Salvador emerged in the early 19th century, when the Captain General of Guatemala was given control over the territory west of the province of Chiapas. This included the entirety of what is now El Salvador and parts of modern Honduras and Nicaragua. But before we get to that, let's go all the way back to the beginning with a quick history of El Salvador. The first inhabitants of El Salvador were the Pipil people who arrived in the region around the year 1000. They were followed by the Lenca and the Corotega peoples who lived in the western and northern regions respectively. When the Spanish began their conquest of Central America in the 16th century, they encountered these three chiefs. The indigenous people were quickly subjugated and incorporated into the colonial economy as a source of cheap labor. The Spanish established the city of Suchawaha as the capital of the region in 1528. However, the city's location proved to be unsustainable, and it was abandoned after only 27 years. In 1543, the Spanish crown created the Audiencia of Guatemala with jurisdiction over El Salvador and the surrounding areas. This Audiencia was dissolved in 1821, when Guatemala declared its independence from Spain and became part of the First Mexican Empire. When this empire collapsed in 1823, El Salvador became a part of the Federal Republic of Central America. In 1841, El Salvador declared its independence from the Central American Federation and became a sovereign nation. The new country's name, El Salvador, means the savior in Spanish, and was chosen to commemorate the country's liberation from the Spanish. El Salvador enjoyed a brief period of stability and prosperity during the rule of President Francisco Marizan, who served from 1842 to 1848. However, following his resignation, the country descended into chaos and instability. El Salvador was the site of the first battle between the armies of the newly independent nations of Honduras and El Salvador. The conflict arose from a dispute over the interpretation of a colonial decree that defined the boundaries of the two provinces. The Hondurans believed that the decree gave them control over the Department of La Libertad, while the Salvadorans claimed that it was a part of their sovereign territory. This territorial dispute eventually led to the 100-year war between the two countries, which lasted until 1921. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, El Salvador experienced significant social and political upheaval. In 1876, the Liberal Party came to power and implemented a series of reforms aimed at modernizing the country. These reforms included the introduction of a new constitution, the secularization of education, and the promotion of economic development. The conservative opposition to these reforms was led by the Rodriguez family, who eventually overthrew the liberal government in 1931. The Rodriguez regime was marked by widespread corruption and abuse of power. In response to the growing discontent among the populace, the military intervened and overthrew the government in 1944. The military government subsequently introduced a series of reforms aimed at addressing the grievances of the population, such as the introduction of universal male suffrage and the nationalization of the country's railroads. However, these reforms proved to be insufficient in addressing the underlying social and economic issues in the country. In 1960, a leftist guerrilla movement known as the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front, or FMLN for short, launched a war against the government. The conflict, known as the Salvadoran Civil War, lasted for 12 years and resulted in the deaths of an estimated 75,000 people. The war ended in 1992 with the signing of the Chapultepec Peace Accords. Since the end of the Civil War, El Salvador has made significant progress towards democracy and peace. In 1994, El Salvador held its first free and fair elections since the war. The country has since experienced a period of relative stability and peace. However, in recent years, the country has been plagued by high levels of crime and violence, which have led some to question the country's future. So what is the future of El Salvador? Only time will tell. But one thing is for sure. It will be interesting to see how this small Central American country continues to develop in the years to come. Thanks for watching.